Cicero, Pro Cluentio, Year 2 English sections. Starting with section 9. It is said that Aulus Cluentius bribed the court with money, by which to condemn his innocent enemy, Statius Albius. I will show, O judges, firstly, since that was the source of that wickedness and hatred, that an innocent man was oppressed by bribery, that no one was ever summoned to court on more serious charges or with more impeccable witnesses. Secondly, that this previous examination into the matter had been held by the very same judges by whom he was condemned, so that far from being acquitted by these same men, there was not even any way that he could be acquitted by any others. When I have informed you of this, then I will prove that point which I understand is the one most needs to be proven, that court was indeed bribed, not by Cluentius, but by those opposed to Cluentius, and I will make you realize in the whole of that case what the actual facts were, what mistake invented, and what hatred fabricated. Section 10. The first point is the following, then, from which it may be realized that Cluentius should have been greatly confident in the case, because he proceeded to accuse Albius, relying on the most certain charges and witnesses who were impeccable. At this point, judges, I must see to it that I briefly explain to you the charges on which Oppianicus was condemned. Oppianicus, I ask you to consider that I am speaking about your father's case unwillingly, led by honour and my sense of duty. Indeed, if I cannot satisfy you at the moment, many opportunities will be given me to satisfy you in the time that remains. Unless I satisfy Cluentius now, there will not be an opportunity to satisfy him later. At the same time, is there anyone who should doubt that I am speaking against a man who was condemned and now dead, on behalf of a man who was guiltless and alive? Especially since condemnation has now removed from that man, who is being attacked, all danger of shame, while death has removed the danger of pain. On the other hand, no setback could assail the man whom we are defending, without a very bitter feeling in his mind and trouble, and without extreme disgrace and baseness to his character. Section 11. Furthermore, so that you may realize that Cluentius was not led to accuse Oppianicus by any feeling of censure, any desire for exhibition or glory, but by Oppianicus's wicked injustices, daily plots, and the danger set before his eyes to his own life, may I ask for a slightly longer introduction to explain the matter. I beg you, judges, to endure it without any annoyance, for when you have learnt of the origins, you will understand the end much more easily. Aulus Cluentius Habitus was the father of the defendant here, gentlemen of the jury. Because of his virtue, reputation, and nobility, was easily the foremost man not only in the town of Larinum from which he came, but also of that region and neighbourhood. When he died, in the consulship of Sulla and Pompeius, he left the defendant, who was 15 years old, and moreover a full-grown daughter of marriageable age. Within a short time after the death of her father, she married Aulus Arius Melinus, her own cousin, a young man both exceptionally honourable and noble among his peers, as he was considered at that time. Section 12. Although this marriage was full of worthiness, full of harmony, suddenly there arose a wicked passion in a shameless woman, which was combined not only with disgrace, but even crime. For Sassia, the mother of this Habitus here, for she will be called mother by me in this whole case. Mother, I say, although she is endowed with the hatred of an enemy and cruelty toward him, nor will she ever hear her wickedness and barbarity described in such a way as to lose the name which nature gave her. For the more loving and forbearing the name of mother is, the more you consider worthy of greater hatred the exceptional wickedness of that mother, who for many years already, and particularly now, has been wishing for the death of her son. And so, this mother of Habitus, enthralled with enthralled with love for that young man Melinus, her own son-in-law, contrary to divine law, first of all tried to restrain herself in that passion, by whatever way she could, but that same restraint was not for long. Then her madness began to burn to such an extent and be so borne along, inflamed by lust, that neither sense of shame, nor modesty, nor sense of duty, nor the disgrace to her family, nor the reputation of mankind, nor the resentment of her son, nor the grief of her daughter, deterred her from her passion. Section 13. She enticed the young man's feelings, which were not yet strengthened by wisdom and reason, with all those devices by which age can be taken in and charmed. The daughter, since she was pained not only by that type of resentment common to women in the case of wrongs done by a husband of that kind, but also could not bear her mother's wicked immorality, about which she thought she could not even complain without feeling guilty, wanted everyone else to be unaware of such a great injustice done to her. She began to grow old with sorrow and tears in the arms and bosom of this most loving brother of hers. Section 14. Now behold, a sudden divorce. It looked as if this would be a relief from all the evils. Cloentia left Melinus, not unwillingly, as you would expect considering such great injustices, but not gladly, as you would expect when parted from her husband. Then indeed that extraordinary renowned mother began to gloat openly with happiness, and to triumph with joy, conqueror of her daughter, but not her lust. And so she was no longer willing for her reputation to be harmed by hidden suspicions. The mother-in-law married the son-in-law, without anyone to take the omens or to approve the wedding, and with sinister omens of every kind. Section 15. Oh, unbelievable crime of the woman, and apart from the case of this one woman, unheard of in all life. Oh, unbridled and untamed lust, oh, unparalleled daring, not to have feared, if not the power of the gods in men's opinion, at any rate she should have feared that very darkness and those marriage tortures. The threshold of the bedroom, her daughter's bed, finally not even those very walls, witnesses of the previous marriage. She shattered and laid low everything in her desire and madness. Lust conquered shame, daring, fear, madness, reason. Section 16. The son grievously bore the disgrace which was shared by the immediate family, the relatives and their name. Moreover, his annoyance was increased by his sister's daily complaints and continual weeping. Moreover, he decided that in view of the great crimes and great wickedness of his mother, he should do nothing more serious than to have any dealings with that mother, lest if he had any dealings with his mother, he might be considered not only to look at things which he could not look at without extreme mental pain, but even to approve them in his own judgment. Section 17. You have heard what was the beginning of this man's enmity with his mother. You will understand the relevance of this to the case when you learn the rest. For it does not escape my notice that whatever kind of person the mother is, it is scarcely fitting for the depravity of a parent to be mentioned in the case involving her son. For I would not be suitable for any case, judges, if I, who was being retained to defend the dangers to men, overlooked that which is firmly fixed on the common feelings of men and in nature itself. I easily understand that men should not only keep quiet about injustices done by their parents, but should also bear them calmly. But I think that those things which can be endured should be endured, and those things which can be concealed should be concealed. Section 18. There was no disaster that Aulus Cloentius saw in his life, no mortal danger that he approached, no evil that he feared which was not completely concocted by or originated from his mother. He would keep quiet about all these things at this time, and would allow them to be concealed by his silence if he could not consign them to oblivion. But the stakes in this case are so high that he could in no way be completely silent. For this very case, this danger, that accusation, that whole supply of witnesses to come, have been initially prepared by the mother, supplied by the mother, at this time, and furnished with all her wealth and resources. In short, this very woman recently flew to Rome from Larinum in order to oppress this man. The woman is ready, bold, mercenary, cruel. She trains the accusers, she prepares the witnesses, she rejoices in this man's squalid appearance and dirty clothing, she prays for his destruction. She is willing to spill all her own blood, provided that she sees this man's blood spilt first. If you have not realized all these factors in the case, consider that we have summoned her to court rashly. But if they are both self-evident and criminal, you will have to pardon Cloentius for allowing these things to be mentioned by me, and you should not pardon me if I keep quiet about them. Time jump to section 43. And that you can thoroughly see that this is so, I will set before you the crime of Oppianicus, which was clearly discovered and detected, from which you will understand at the same time both that it was necessary for my client to prosecute Oppianicus, and that Oppianicus had to be convicted. There were certain people at Larinum, called the Martiales, public servants of Mars, and dedicated to this god by the ancient customs and religious rites of the people of Larinum, though there was a sufficiently large number of these, and moreover, just as there are very many priests of Venus in Sicily, so these priests at Larinum are reckoned to belong to the household of Mars. Suddenly, Oppianicus began to maintain that they were free men and Roman citizens. The 10 councillors of the people of Larinum and all the townsfolk were very annoyed at this. Therefore, they asked Habitus to undertake this case and defend them in public interest. Although Habitus had kept clear of all business of this kind, nevertheless, in view of his position, the antiquity of his clan, and the fact that he considered that he had been born not to serve his own interests, but those of his fellow townsfolk and the rest of his associates, he was unwilling to fail the great wish of all the people of Larinum. Section 44. Having undertaken the business, when the cause had been transferred to Rome, great contentions arose every day between Habitus and Oppianicus, from the zeal of each for the side which he espoused. Oppianicus himself was a man of bitter and savage disposition, and Habitus's own mother, being hostile to and furious against her son, inflamed his insane hatred. But they thought it exceedingly desirable for them to get rid of him, and to disconnect him from the cause of the Martiales. There was also another more influential reason, which had great weight with Oppianicus, being a most avaricious and audacious man. Section 45. For up to the time of that trial, Habitus had never made any will, for he could not make up his mind to bequeath anything to such a mother as his, nor on the other hand to leave his parents' name entirely out of his will. And as Oppianicus was aware of that, for it was no secret, he plainly saw that if Habitus were dead, all his property would come to his mother, and she might afterwards, when she had become richer and had lost her son, be put out of the way by him, with more profit and with less danger. So now see in what manner he, being urged on by these desires, endeavoured to take off Habitus by poison. Section 46. There were 2 twin brothers of the municipality of Alatrina, by name Caius and Lucius Fabricius. Men very like one another in appearance and disposition, but very unlike the rest of their fellow citizens, among whom that uniform respectability of character there was, and what consistent and moderate habits of life, there is not one of you, I imagine, who is ignorant. Oppianicus was always exceedingly intimate with these Fabrici. You are all pretty aware what great power in causing friendship a similarity of pursuits and disposition has. As these two men lived in such a way as to think no gain discreditable, as every sort of fraud and treachery and cheating of young men was practised by them, as they were notorious for every sort of vice and dishonesty, Oppianicus, as I have said, had cultivated their intimacy for years. Section 47. Accordingly, he now resolved to prepare destruction for Habitus by the agents of Caius Fabricius, for Lucius had died. Habitus was at that time in delicate health, and he was employing a physician of no great reputation, but a man of tried skill and honesty, by name Cleophantus, whose slave, Diogenes, Fabricius began to tamper with, and to induce by promises and bribes to give poison to Habitus. The slave, being a cunning fellow, but as the affair proved, a virtuous and upright man, did not refuse to listen to Fabricius's discourse. He reported the matter to his master, and Cleophantus had a conference with Habitus. Habitus immediately communicated the business to Marcus Bibius, a senator, his most intimate friend, and I imagine you all recollect what a loyal, prudent, and worthy man he was. His advice was that Habitus should buy Diogenes from Cleophantus, in order that the matter might be more easily proved by his information, or else be discovered to be false. Not to make a long story of it, Diogenes is bought, the poison is procured within a few days, when many virtuous men had secretly been aware of it, and the sealed up packet of money, which was given for that purpose, is apprehended in the hands of Scamander, a freedman of the Fabrici. Section 48. O ye immortal gods, will anyone, when he has heard all these facts, say that Oppianicus was falsely convicted? Who was ever more audacious? Who was ever more guilty? Who was ever brought before a court more manifestly detected in his guilt? What genius, what eloquence could there be, what plea in defence could possibly be devised, which could stand against this single accusation? And at the time, who is there that can doubt that in such a case as this, so clearly detected and proved, Cluentius was forced either to die himself or to undertake the prosecution? Section 49. I think, O judges, that it is proved plainly enough that Oppianicus was prosecuted on such accusations that it was absolutely impossible for him to be honestly acquitted. Now I will show you that he was brought before the courts as a criminal, in such a way that he came before them already condemned, as there had been more than one or even two previous investigations of his case. For Cluentius, O judges, in the first instance, accused that man in whose hands he had seized the poison. That was Scamander, the freedman of the Fabrici. The court was honest. There was no suspicion of the judges of being bribed. A plain case, a well-proven fact, an undeniable charge was brought before the court. So then this Fabricius, the man who I have mentioned already, seeing that if his freedman was condemned, he himself would be in danger, because he knew that I lived in the neighbourhood of Alatrinum, and was very intimate with many of the citizens of that place, brought a number of them to me, who, although they had that opinion of the man which they could not help having, still, because he was of the same municipality as themselves, thought it concerned their dignity to defend him by what means they could, and they begged of me that I would do so, and that I would undertake the cause of Scamander, and on his cause all the safety of his master depended. Section 50. As I was unable to refuse anything to men who were so respectable and so attached to me, and as I was not aware that the accusation was one involving crimes of such enormity and so undeniably proved, as indeed they too, who were then recommending the cause to me, were not aware either, promised to do all that they asked of me. The cause began to be pleaded. Scamander, the defendant, was cited before the court. Publius Publius Canutius was the counsel for the prosecution, a man of the greatest ability and a very accomplished speaker, and he accused Scamander in plain words, saying that the poison had been discovered on him. All the force of his accusation was directed against Oppianicus. The cause of his designs against Cluentius was revealed. His intimacy with the Fabrici was mentioned, the way of life and audacity of the man was revealed. In short, the whole accusation was stated with great firmness and with varied eloquence, and at last was summed up by the proved discovery of the poison. Section 51. Then I rose to reply. With what anxiety, O ye immortal gods! With what anxiety of mind! With what fear! Indeed, I am always very nervous when I begin to speak. As often as I rise to speak, so often do I think that I am myself on trial, not only as to my ability, but also as to my virtue, and as to the discharge of my duty, lest I should either seem to have undertaken what I am incapable of performing, which is an impudent act, or not to perform it as well as I can, which is either a perfidious action or a careless one. But at that time I was so agitated that I was afraid of everything. I was afraid, if I said nothing, of being thought utterly devoid of eloquence, and if I said much in such a case, of being considered the most shameless of men. I recollected myself after a time, and adopted this resolution, that I must needs act boldly. That the age which I was at that time generally had much allowance made for it, even if I were to stand by men in danger, though their cause had but little justice in it, and so I acted. I strove and contended by every possible means. I had recourse to every possible expedient, to every imaginable excuse in the case which I could think of, so as, at all events, though I am almost ashamed to say it, no one could think that the cause had been left without an advocate. Section 52. But what excuse I tried to put forth, the prosecutor immediately wrestled out of my hands. If I asked what enmity there was between Scamander and Habitus, he admitted that there was none, but he said that Oppianicus, whose agent he had always been and still was most hostile to Habitus. If again I urged that no advantage would accrue to Scamander by the death of Habitus, he admitted that point, but he said that all the property of Habitus would come to the wife of Oppianicus, a man who had had plenty of practice in killing his wives. When I employed this argument in the defence, which has always been considered a most honourable one to use in the causes of freedmen, that Scamander was highly esteemed by his patron, he admitted that, but asked who had any opinion of that patron himself. Section 53. When I urged at some length the argument that the plot might have been laid against Scamander by Diogenes, and that it might have been arranged between them on some other account that Diogenes should bring him medicine, not poison, and that this might happen to anyone, he asked why he came into such a place as that, into so secret a place, why he came by himself, and why he came with a sum of money sealed up. And lastly, at this point, our cause was weighed down by the witnesses. Most honourable men, Marcus Babrius and that Diogenes, had been brought on his advice, and that he was present when Scamander was seized with the poison and the money in his possession. Publius Quintilius Varus, a man of the most scrupulous honour, and of the greatest authority, said that Cleophantus had conversed with him about the plots which were being laid against Habitus, and about the tampering with Diogenes while the matter was fresh. Section 54. And all through that trial, Though we appeared to be defending Scamander, he was the defendant only in name, but in reality it was Oppianicus who was in peril, and who was the object of the whole prosecution. Nor indeed was there any doubt about it, nor could he disguise that that was the case. He was constantly present in course, constantly interfering in the case, he was exerting all his zeal and all his influence. And lastly, which was of the great injury to our cause, he was sitting in that very place as if he were the defendant. The eyes of all the judges were directed not towards Scamander, but towards Oppianicus. His fear, his agitation, his countenance betraying suspense and uncertainty, his constant change of colour made all those things which were previously very suspicious, palpable and evident. Section 55. When the judges were about to come to their decision, Caius Junius, the president, asked the defendant, according to the provisions of the Cornelian law which then existed, whether he wished the decision to be come to in his case secretly or openly. He replied on the advice of Oppianicus, because he said that Junius was an intimate friend of Habitus, that he wished the decision to be come to secretly. The judges deliberated. Scamander on the first trial was convicted by every vote except one, which Staianus said was his. Who in the whole city was there at that time, who when Scamander was condemned, did not think that sentence had been passed on Oppianicus? What point was decided by that conviction, except that the poison had been procured for the purpose of being given to Habitus? However, what suspicion of the very slightest nature attached, or could attach to Scamander, so that he should be thought to have desired of his own accord to kill Habitus? Section 56. And now that this trial had taken place, now that Oppianicus was convicted in fact, in the general opinion of everyone, though he was not yet condemned by any sentence having been legally passed upon him, still Habitus did not at once proceed criminally against Oppianicus. He wished to know whether the judges were severe only against those men whom they had ascertained to have poison in their own possession, or whether they judged the intention and complicity of others in such crimes worthy of the same punishment. Therefore, he immediately proceeded against Caius Fabricius, who, on account of his intimacy with Oppianicus, he thought must have been privy to that crime, and on account of the connection of the two causes, he obtained leave to have that case taken first. Then this Fabricius not only did not bring to me my neighbours and friends, the citizens of Alatrinum, but he was not able himself any longer to employ them as men eager in his defence, or as witness to his character. Boys. Section 57. For they and I thought it suitable to our humanity to uphold the cause of a man not entirely a stranger to us, while it was undecided, though suspicious, but to endeavour to upset the decision which had been come to, we would have thought a deed of great impudence. Accordingly he, being compelled by his desolate condition and necessity, fled for aid to the brothers Capassi, industrious men, and of such a disposition as to think it an honour and a kindness to have any opportunity of speaking afforded to them. Section 58. The defendant is brought before the court. The cause is pleaded. Canutius says but little in support of the accusation, it being a case in fact already decided. The elder Capacius begins to reply in a long exordium tracing the facts a long way back. At first his speech is listened to with attention. Oppianus began to recover his spirits, having been downcast and dejected before. Fabricius himself was delighted. He was not aware that the attention of the judges was awakened, not by the eloquence of the man, but by the impudence of the defence. After he began to discuss the immediate facts of the man. After he began to discuss the immediate facts of the case, he himself added some new wounds to the unfavourable circumstances that already existed in the case. Although he pleaded with great diligence, yet at times he seemed not to be defending the man, but only quibbling with the accusation. And while he was thinking that he was speaking with great art, and when he had made up this form of words with his utmost skill, "Look, O judges, at the fortunes of the men. Look at the uncertainty and variety of the events that have befallen them. Look at the old age of Fabricius." When he had frequently repeated this "look" for the sake of adorning his speech, he himself did look, but Caius Fabricius had slunk away from his seat with his head down. Section 59. Thereupon the judges began to laugh. The council began to get in a rage, and to be very indignant that his cause was taken out of his mouth, and that he could not go on saying "Look, O judges," from that place, nor was anything nearer happening than his pursuing him and seizing him by the throat and bringing him back to his seat, in order that he might be able to finish his summing up. And so Fabricius was condemned, in the first place by his own judgment, which is the severest condemnation of all, and in the second place by the authority of the law and by the sentences of the judges. Why, now, need we say any more of the character and the cause of Oppianicus? He was brought as a defendant before those very judges by whom he had already been condemned in 10 previous examinations, by the same judges who, by the condemnation of Fabricius, had in reality passed sentence on Oppianicus. His trial was appointed to come on first. He was accused of the gravest crimes, both those which have already been briefly mentioned by me, and of many others besides, all of which I now pass over. He was accused before those men who had already condemned both Scamander, the agent of Oppianicus, and Fabricius, his accomplice in crime. Section 60. Which, O ye immortal gods, is more to be wondered at, that he was condemned, or that he dared to reply at all? For what could those judges have done? If they had condemned the Fabrici when innocent, still in the case of Oppianicus they ought to have been consistent with themselves, and to have made their present decisions harmonize with their previous ones. Could they themselves, of their own accord, resign their own judgments? When other men, when giving judgment, are accustomed most especially to take care that their decisions be not at variance with those of other judges. And could those who had condemned the freedman of Fabricius, because he had been an agent in the crime, and his patron, because he had been privy to it, acquit the principal and original contriver of the whole wickedness? Could those who, without any previous examination, had condemned the other men from what appeared in the cause itself, acquit this man, whom they knew to have been already convicted twice over? Section 61. Then indeed, those decisions of the senatorial body, branded with no imaginary odium, but with real and conspicuous infamy, covered with disgrace and ignominy, would have left no room for any defence of them. For what answer could these judges make if anyone asked of them, "You have condemned You have condemned Scamander. Of what crime? Because, forsooth, he attempted to murder Habitus by poison, by the agency of the slave of the doctor. What was Scamander to gain by the death of Oppianicus? Nothing. By the death of Habitus? Nothing, but he was the agent of Oppianicus. You have condemned Caius Fabricius. Why so? Because as he himself was exceedingly intimate with Oppianicus, and as his freedman had been detected in the very act, it was not proved that he was entirely ignorant of his design. If, then, they had acquitted Oppianicus himself, after he had been twice condemned by their own decisions, who would have endured such infamy on the part of the tribunals, such inconsistency in judicial decisions, and such caprice on the part of the judges? That is the end of Cicero Pro Quintio, English sections, year 2.